All right, here we go. What's going on, guys? Welcome back to episode 2 of Commissioner's Corner. Uh, this is week 2. We have a special guest today. We have Andrew Louis, who's a veteran point guard of the JP League. He's not new to the basketball scene. He's been playing, all his life. When he first moved in, he joined season 1. He's played multiple seasons, won a few championships. He's also helped coach the rec division. So thank you for joining. And we have myself, the commissioner, and Commissioner Ethan as well. And you already know what we do. So yeah, just wanted to kind of start things off talking about Louis and hey man, like you've been playing in the JP League for a couple seasons. You play in other leagues. You have a lot of basketball experience. Just want to hear your thoughts on your experience playing in the JP League. Yeah, in general.
Yeah, well, first, thank you guys for the invite and allowing me to come on to the podcast, talk hoops with you guys. Obviously, uh, first things first, beyond the championships, not only have won it as a player, but have also, don't forget, I also won one as a coach for the rec league as well. So don't forget that from the description. But I think, the question in itself, why the JP League versus, maybe some of the other leagues, right? Like you talk about Dynasty, Basketball City. Um, A, I think it's the community of people that you're playing against. You know everyone, right? There's, fun little rivalries. You know the personnel, you see them every day. Some of the things gets a little bit more personal, right? Playing with your friends and other people. And it's, just a little bit more skin on the line, right? Whether it's pride, whether it's, just for jabs. And it's a little bit different than when you take a look at like TDL or Basketball City, because a lot of times when you're playing in those leagues, right, you're bringing your own team, you're picking the people you want to play with. Also, a unique aspect of how we run and participate in the JP League is, right, you pick captains, you basically draft out of the player pool. So not only are you meeting new people, playing with new individuals that you may not have played with, but there's also that element of hey, putting together a team, understanding the roles, the strategy, the game plans versus defaulting and playing with guys that you normally play with all the time, and you can easily default back into situational roles.
Yeah, no, that's definitely true. That's definitely one of the biggest differences I see between the JP League and other leagues. Talking about the draft, you're playing on a completely new team this season, saving Captain Ryan. Ryan Huh had drafted you as his second pick. And I think most of the guys on that team, you're kind of new playing with. What's your experience like so far? Game 2, you guys got the win. What's like the what's your approach on the court, and like how do you see yourself kind of contributing this season? Is there anything different this season than the last couple seasons?
Yeah, I think the first one being the the team that I'm playing with, Ryan, Zenyi, KG and everyone else. I think there's a little bit of a um growing period, right, for us to understand how we want to play, how each other's play. And it's a little bit different than how normally you would play with some of these players and pick up it. And especially when you start to play organized basketball, right? You got the rules, you got the regular, you got the IQ that starts to come in, and then you also have like the strategy of like how you want to approach personnel, matchups, and everything like that. And I think for myself, I think this season I'm falling back into a little bit more of a point guard, like, floor general type of position than maybe previous seasons, right? A little bit more focus on making sure the team is A in putting them in the right spots, getting them in the areas where they feel dangerous or where their games are comfortable, and having to adjust maybe more so my game to accommodate theirs, knowing it's a lot easier being able to complement someone else's game versus having other people complement your own. And then also what can be a little difficult. Sometimes there can be a little bit of a language barrier in communication, right? Like we're talking really quickly, sometimes in English in the huddles, but then on, the court, where, people are speaking Chinese to each other or, using their hands and body language, right? So that's all a part of like learning the team, understanding like how we're communicating, how we're sharing, how we want to play together, and that's takes a little bit of time and knowing like the JP League is what 6 to 8 weeks, right? Like you're on a crash course in terms of really trying to furnace together, team chemistry and, team hierarchy all within learning about each other and learning about the team versus like other leagues where you kind of already come into, the start of the season knowing kind of how your team is set up and what that hierarchy is.
Yeah, no, definitely. And I think the challenges and the differences you kind of talked about, I already noticed there's a big change week over week from week one, your team playing and versus week two, right? Week one, I feel like you guys are just kind of getting used to each other playing on the court, that language barrier you're talking about. You guys didn't get the win. You guys lost that week. But then week two, I noticed like a huge difference. You guys were playing much better in general, like as a team, like everybody was playing better, I thought. And you guys, decisively had that victory, I felt. What were your thoughts on like week two's games? Like any big improvements you've noticed from week one to week two?
I mean, I think for my team specifically, right? I think the team in itself, like we were a little bit more vocal, communicated like where we wanted to either A, play the game, B, look at personnel and matchups, and then lastly, more importantly, just about strategy as a team. Like, do we want to run? What type of shots are we looking for? Really trusting one another, but like still giving everyone a little bit of leash and grace, right? For their own game. And I think, the first game, we maybe pressed a little bit too much. We were maybe a little bit too passive, everyone trying to figure out who was doing what. And, the game started to become a little bit stagnant, right? When you're playing, one on two, three on five, right? And I think, the week two, the flow of the game, how we were matching up and playing, like it seemed very much more natural in within the flow state of the game. And it's really weird, how I'm describing it, but like if you watched it, you would understand, right? From the body language, from how the players are playing and just like the overall like movement of players. It just the poetry and the composition, right, of our team just seemed to flow a lot better, right? And it wasn't as like fragmented as it was before.
Oh, I understand.
Poetry is a strong word.
Oh, yeah. Oh, I
Poetry is a
understand it
very
though.
strong word. You guys played a lot better, but poetry is a very strong word. But yeah, you guys played a lot better.
Yeah, so I totally understand where you're coming from. Watching the game myself, I thought everything flowed a lot better, like you said. So yeah, that's awesome. Congrats on your first win on week two. Also, you guys didn't have two players, right? Like you were missing Andy and you're missing Ryan. Ryan is still out with a knee injury. Let's talk about the team you played against, right? So that team was Mo Money, Mo Buckets.
Hmm.
Captain's Mo. They have Luis. They have Jeff Liu. Mo, Brandon, Anthony Huang, and Michael Kim, who played. What are your thoughts about that team? Like, what wasn't really like working for them? I guess like what's their strengths, kind of like that. What's their play style like?
Yeah, I mean, most team, talent wise, probably up there with any other team on paper, right? I think what we saw within the game, and then also, just being there in the trenches and seeing it, I think there is a still that conversation and, that I guess dance that their team needs to do in terms of like figuring out like what specific roles everyone on the team is doing. With that team, right? Having three, four, easily like really good like players one on one or scorers, right? Like there's one ball. How are you making sure, each each person is being able to pick their spots, be in the positions where they, you know, like to operate in, but also how does it not turn into like a one-on-one game, right? Especially within like that steady flow of like an overall 5-on-5 game, especially within an organized setting. How, how are they putting themselves or making sure like, hey, the offense is moving, everyone's feeling like they're getting enough touches or being put in positions to be dangerous enough. I think in that game, as we got towards like the second half and everything else, it started to then default back to a little bit more pickup, one-on-one, and it made it a little bit easier for us to be able to help and even double, right? And be a little bit more aggressive on defense. I think if there were, opportunities for them to be able to kind of leverage, their personnel with, you know, some off ball or things like that by playing, either off of if it's Luis or if it's Brandon or Jeff, right? Like they have more than enough, you know, opportunities and threats on the floor for them to be able to kind of pick and choose how they want to break certain teams down, and that team's going to be fine. I think they'll figure it out. I think just over the course of the season, like I mentioned, right? It's a compressed season. It's also guys like you play with and but like also it's usually not like the same teams like if you're going into a specific league where everyone has like defined roles. And I think that's hard to kind of like get through really really quickly, especially if you're not talking about it or you're not thinking about like how every person within the team like has an impact or a larger influence to the overall team success and identity.
Yeah. Yeah, I think one thing you really said is like their one-on-one game. I noticed probably like most of that game, I think it was a lot of isolation. Ball's very sticky in one guy's hand. Wasn't getting moved around. They weren't playing off the ball very well. So, if one guy's not scoring or making their shots, because I'm looking at the stats right now, they shot 27 threes and they made five. So that's 18%, which is, not a great number. They shot really bad from the field. If all your ISO guys are not feeling it that night, and like you said yourself, you guys were more aggressive on D with the double and the help D, making them take tough shots. Yeah, it was just a tough night for them on a shooting wise. I'm also looking at some surprising numbers as well. Is the rebounds? They had 33 total offense and defensive rebounds. You guys had 45. So I noticed like you had, you know, Zhang Chi with 10 rebounds, Zheng Yi. You also had 7 rebounds yourself. So like um the rebounding numbers kind of speaks a lot, able to get another possession or secure possessions. Uh but one surprising stat that I saw is you guys had a ton of turnovers, 17 turnovers versus 9 on the other side. So despite the turnovers, their shooting percentages were off. You guys must have had the defensive strategy on lockdown. Their top scores, it was pretty even across the board, like 12, 12, 9, 12, 12, 1. So they had like kind of scoring distributed. Same with you guys. But I think you kind of described it perfectly. They were just going one person at a time, trying to score a bucket, weren't hitting their shots. Maybe you guys were forcing them into forcing some bad shots. And if you're not feeling it, then you're not going to score.
Yeah, I mean, you make a good point, right? I mean, that definitely played part in like the strategy of what we talked about before the game. Also knowing, we had a little bit of height, right, with Zenyi and our big on our side, right, and even our guards, myself included, right, hitting the boards and rebounding, like those are extra possessions, for ourselves and being able to take advantage of some of those, additional rebounds and possessions was key. Obviously, we weren't great, in terms of like the turnovers, right? That's all obviously something, we want to clean up, we want to get better at, especially, and I take accountability for not only myself but like the team. I want to make sure, if the ball's in my hands or I'm helping to direct traffic, things like that, we're putting each other in the right positions, right? to be successful. And I think even some of them were still a little I don't want to say juvenile, I guess lack of a better term, but like, we still had like 3 seconds in the key, right? They were still like on travels even when, we're coming off of a down pick or, a cross screen, right? And that's just, more either awareness and just like nervousness, right? From a team, like where we're trying to press too hard or we're moving before, we're making the right decisions and moving a little bit faster than maybe the game is expecting it. So, that's something we can look to clean up. Hopefully that gets better, but ideally we want to be less than 10 turnovers a game. Um, and if we can get additional rebounds and additional possessions, right, that obviously spells a good thing for us. And hopefully, the way that we continue to shoot the ball, find possessions and shots, turn into valuable second chance opportunities and ideally convert them as points. Um, yeah, then I think you take a look at the rest of the game, right? Those extra possessions, some of the ticky-tack fouls or turnovers that we had, like the game got close even when I think our lead was like 8 or 10 with about 4.5, 5 minutes left, right? And then, there was an incident where, Luis off of inbounds got fouled on a shot attempt, knowing there was also like 3 or 4 seconds left, right? Then there was a technical, right? And then, they make think 3 out of 4 free throws, the one that they miss. Our team is fighting for a rebound. Two people, you know, ourselves on the same team fighting for the same rebound. Ball gets away. Mo gets, a loose ball, gets a layup, right? Cuts down the possession
Five,
from
6 point swing in like five
yeah, right.
seconds.
We're 8 points up, right? And now we're only three, and it's like 4 minutes left, right? Now it's then it's a single possession game. Like so, those are things that I think from a IQ and a mental right capacity, I think we can definitely clean that up. Just took our eye off the ball, but like that's a moment right where the score, the personnel and everything else where is a lapse in either our mental focus and look what happened, right? Like what we were cruising and having like a pretty like on cruise control type of game turned out to be a little bit more hectic and exciting right at the end, which good for the crowd and everything else. But for ourselves, like we're putting ourselves in positions where we don't need to be. And that comes down to just like IQ and awareness, right? And that's something that I think we can ideally grow from. And as a team, like really put ourselves in positions to be, just smarter on things, right? Like you're never going to be able to change a referee's call, right? You could talk to them to understand why they made the call, maybe get in the air about change, giving you that same call on the back end, but yelling or you know, the ref's in a call what they're in a call, right? You're not going to be able to change it. So like by trying to influence that decision, you're only compounding that mistake. And coaches and other things in the past were like, hey, you just got to leave every possession as its own, and you don't want to compound bad mistakes.
Definitely. Cool. No, I really like the growth and what you're seeing from your team. And week three, you guys got the matchup against Team Kevin Diaz. Before we go into that, just want to do a quick like, what's who's like a player on your team that impressed you the most, and maybe like a reason, like what they've been doing.
I mean, I would say Zenyi for sure. He's probably, the spotlight player that, most of the league and everyone else is probably going to talk about. But I think take a look at like Jerry and even KG, right? Like they're doing a lot of the dirty work in terms of, they're guarding Brandon, they're fighting through every screen. Well, they're doing the same thing with Luis, right? Sometimes, right, the defense and everything else kind of gets lost. Because like if it's not showing up in the stat sheet, right? Like how do guys or even, people who are watching the game measure impact? But I think if you are a fan of hoops and you understand it from like a very high level, you'll start to see the impact that they have just because of how they're affecting the game with their effort, right? And just their energy. And that is contagious, can go take us a long way. Denny's been incredible both offensively and defensively. Like I've played with him multiple seasons. He's been on my team. I think this is like the third time. And his growth as a player and where he has, not only matured, but like made focuses on like this season and how his game is kind of, emerged versus like past seasons is night and day. And he's always been able to shoot the ball. He's always been able to play within like the larger, offense of things from past seasons. But like him being able now to be able to make, certain decisions when the ball's in his hands or in transition or off ball to put him in better positions to score, I would say has really matured and I've seen a level of growth that, you know, 2 seasons ago, right? Um, he was primarily just like a shooter off the wing, and now with him driving, pull up, going to the basket and even being a playmaker on some of those dribble drives and handoffs, like makes him a lot more dangerous, opens up the rest of his game for him to be successful and for us as a team.
Yeah, no, definitely seen his growth and improvement, like what I'm seeing from him so far. How about on the other team? So like Mo Money, Mo Buckets, like who's like one player that kind of stood out for you? We need to kind of watch out for, like the rest of the league needs to kind of look out for.
I mean, I would say, they definitely got who was it, Anthony who can shoot. First time I've shared the court with him. We like I was mentioning from a defensive standpoint, right? Our first priority was like making sure we stop any of the dribble drives from Luis or Mo, right? Force them into either A, taking contested shots or passing it off and seeing, what the rest of their team could do from a scoring perspective. I think Anthony has like 4 threes or something like that. Um and he can knock down jumpers, right? And especially in this league, right? If you can knock down jumpers, makes defenses have to play you honestly. And if you have to play honestly on a shooter, it not only allows you to space more, but also creates more space for the rest of your team. So knowing Luis, Brandon, Mo, Jeff all love to drive, um, them being able to ensure and make sure that like, hey, Anthony is part of like the offense to help stretch and space the floor will only open up, driving lanes for their own, offensive possessions.
Yep. Anthony has been shooting well. Same with his twin brother Brian. I don't know if his numbers are good, but they every time I watch him play, they're always looking to shoot.
I didn't
Got
even know he was a twin. Shit.
yeah, that's crazy,
Yeah.
right? It's confusing because we were joking about this, like who's the better twin. I spoke with Brian. He says he's the better one. So I still have. I'm gonna wait till the end of the season to really kind of determine, but still early now. Ethan, you played this team last week. Mo Money, Mo Buckets. Did you see anything different from week one to week two for this team?
Yeah and no. Um, so I think overall they actually played pretty well, given that they put up 58 points. 58 points is actually pretty good. Um, I think just Louis' team played better, scoring 67. 67 is a pretty large number for 44 minutes running time. So they scored enough points to win. It's just I think defensively they didn't have enough to stop them. So they definitely played better in that regard. They scored more points. In terms of what they did the same, I agree with you guys. They went ISO like way too much. I was actually paying really close attention to how they would come out and play, and on film, there's so many possessions where they don't even pass it a single time. Like so many possessions. And sometimes you notice it when you're watching the game, and sometimes you don't. It just looks like, oh, he's a good player. Oh, he's taking him one on one. Oh, he got a pretty good drive to the basket. That's a pretty okay shot. But if you just kind of analyze it from like, okay, like, are they getting other players involved? How many times are they passing? What's happening on the weak side? Are they screening for each other? Is their movement? What's their body language like? And I'm looking for that when I'm looking at their film because I'm like trying to see like what they can do better. I don't want them, I want them to improve. Um, and there's so many possessions where the guy brings it up top of the key and they just go ISO one-on-one, zero passes. They might pass it one time and then they go ISO again. There's not a lot of strategizing and game planning on their part, I don't think. I don't want to speak for them. Maybe they do strategize and they just don't execute, but it's not translating to the game film. Um, they do have possessions where they pass it around more, but I think what's happening is like because they don't pass the ball, uh, when they do get the ball, they don't want to pass it again because they don't think the ball's going to come back. And so they get into like a rush shot or they try to force something. Um, I think that's particularly true for like Michael. Michael, he doesn't touch the ball very much, so when he did touch it, like he basically like always shot it. Um, I think that happens with Louise. Louise, when he doesn't get like set up, so sometimes he just brings it down and he just like goes ISO. And we know all of them can like go ISO, but it's going to be hard for every player on the team to stay engaged and do all of the dirty things. You guys mentioned like KG and Jerry doing all the dirty things. Like all of the players need to touch the ball and feel engaged and like they're part of a team versus like just coming down and just like watching one guy go ISO. Um, so those are the parts that I saw where I felt like they were kind of doing the same thing, but um, they did play better. I felt like they played with better energy.
Yeah, I agree. You hear that, Mo? You have to pass the ball. So tell your team to start passing and cutting and setting up each other. And week three will be your big opportunity. Cool. Kind of shifting gears here. Since we're talking about since Ethan's talking about his opponent from last week, Ethan, why don't you talk about this past matchup you guys had against Taylor's Swifties? So this team, quick little recap. They're missing a lot of players. Sen, who was out due to sickness. Zach he was working too hard in the gym on leg day and he was too sore. And then I think who else was missing that day? They
Zach.
also
Taylor.
have Taylor has a dislocated shoulder. News: Josh Liu will be replacing Taylor, but he was unable to make it. So we
Oh,
got a
breaking news.
yeah, breaking news. We got a sub for him. I thought Arpon was gonna sub, but then all of a sudden Sean comes out with the JP League jersey and he subs in for them. I was very surprised,
I
but
was very surprised to see Sean, the former MVP,
there
everything
must
else being on the floor,
I
walking in.
I have the story here that I can share. So basically, Ed hit up Schwartz and asked if Sean can sub because they're missing a lot of guys. They're missing Taylor, they're missing Sen, they're missing Zach. Those are three core pieces. And then they didn't know if they were going to have Manuel. Apparently, Manuel is not very active in the group chat, so they had no idea if he was coming. They didn't even know if Tyler was coming, if I remember correctly. So yeah, they were like, it's just going to be Ed, uh, and who else is on their team? Kenny
Kenny,
France.
and France. So
Yep.
they had like three. So yeah, Schwartz in our group chat was like, hey, like Ed just asked if Sean can play. Like, should we allow that? And we kind of thought about it and we're like, yeah, they're missing a lot, like we definitely want to win, but we don't want to win so badly that like we're not going to give them anything. Like having Taylor, Zach, and Sen out, that's just so much firepower that they're losing. So yeah, let's give him Sean and like let's test ourselves. Like Sean is a great player. He's like what is it, three-time MVP, right?
yeah,
I
I
think
think
so.
so.
Yeah, so
Two-time
he's a
champ,
beast. Yeah. And then I think Arpon was also discussed and agreed to. But then when we arrived at the court, they actually had seven players, including Sean and Arpon, and we only had six. And we felt like, oh, that's a little
They
maybe
pulled a fast
too
one.
yeah, a little too much. Like we don't want to get tired and like be at a disadvantage. So it sucks for Arpon because Arpon showed up to the game, but Arpon wasn't able to play, so we can make it six versus six. But yeah, that's the backstory there.
Yeah, so even with Sean, the three-time MVP, you guys had a really strong victory, won by 24 24, won by 24 points, pretty much crushed this team. From my recap of the game was Commissioner Ethan and Josh Schwartz combined shot 11 for 17 on the three. Which
They
is
were
very,
still hot from
yeah,
Tuesday, you know. They had a lot of shots up at Dynasty that were going in, so I guess they were just letting it fly still.
yeah, the ball movement was crisp, and they would find sometimes Josh would just kind of bring it up or like take one dribble and just pull up off of one pass. Like, yeah, they were just hot. Like 11 for 17 is really solid. Can't really do much better than that right now so far this season. Um, yeah, Ethan, what are your thoughts on your team's overall performance?
Um, we definitely played well. What did we put up? Also 67 points?
You guys had 67 points. Yep.
Yeah, so when you get close to 70 in JP League, that means you're definitely humming on offense. So yeah, Josh and I shot very well. I don't want to focus on that too much. Actually, I thought we have a lot of room for improvement. So what stuck out to me was Brian Melville was back, helped us with the rebounding, the energy, the hustle. But he was definitely rusty. He missed all of his shots, and all of them were good shots. They were strong drives to the basket or offensive rebounds, and he was trying to put it back. Of course, he's going against Sean. They're not going to give them those easy baskets around the basket, so they're going to be contested. But I feel like 0 for 8 is not normal Brian. I would expect a higher, level of efficiency from him. So those are points that we can get. And then Josh Liu, our Josh Liu, actually had 9 turnovers if you look at the stat sheet. I remember there was one where I threw him a pass where he was cutting baseline backdoor and his defender fell asleep and he was wide open for 2 points and the ball just slipped out of his hands out of bounds right on the baseline. So there's room for improvement there. And then the other thing is if you look at our stat sheet is Brian Huang shot 21 times. He shot a lot. And his
That's the twin brother, right?
yeah, that's the twin brother. And I'm not saying that to like single him out or criticize him in any way. I'm just saying that he shot a lot, and I liked the heavy majority of his shots. Maybe a handful I would take back, thinking they were a little too forced or not in the flow of the game, where he was definitely frustrated because he was missing so much, right? And I think he's frustrated because he knows he can make those shots. I've seen him make those shots when I've played against him in pickup. So I'm confident in his looks. But yeah, he didn't shoot a good percentage, and that stood out to me. And so that plays into what I'm saying. I think we have room for improvement. We could actually even be better.
No, totally agree. I didn't realize he shot that
Yeah.
many shots. 21's a lot. Um, but yeah, there's definitely I've seen him shoot well. His brother shoots pretty well. They both seem like pretty solid shooters. And Brian M, his first game back, it's been a minute, I think, since he's played a league game. So, he's probably maybe just a conditioning, maybe it's just a combination of Sean guarding him and his first game back. So I expect him to bounce back as well. Um, the other team, Taylor Swifties, like what's going on with them? I We haven't had a chance to play them yet. Louis, did you play them yet?
We
No.
haven't played them. I think we play them in like that towards the end of the season, but you know, they're hurting without any players, right? Like, and it's already tough, right, to play without Taylor, who, is basically a secondary coach and someone who, is like we mentioned, right? He's a guy who's willing to sacrifice his game, right? He does all the dirty work, right? For his team to be able to function, right? So, if you have this rotating door of subs and players that are coming in. It's a good thing that they got Josh Liu, the other one, to kind of replace Taylor, right? So that they have some consistency and someone stable who's coming to games so they can build chemistry, understand how to play off of one another. And Edgar, Josh, they play together, so that should be good chemistry wise. But it's always tough, like when you have subs or things like that, like do subs want to push, how much they're shooting or impacting a game? Do they want to be a little bit more passive to make sure, hey, they're not stepping on any toes, right? Like And if you have that rotating door of subs and the core of your team, aren't there, right? Sen and Zach are huge weapons and part of like their team identity. Like makes it tough, right? To really not only game plan but play, right? Because they're great defenders, right? A lot of times, I think the game before, right? They when they played Jones' team, there's lots of turnovers, buckets in transition, right? That simplifies the game, short, compresses down like where you need to spend energy and effort, but like you're getting points in return. Like a lot of the stuff when I saw like they're running half court sets, some things they're trying to get in transition, but a lot harder. So like that comes that complicates the game, right? Now you're looking at running half court sets and running, certain things to like get the offense initiated and to get shots, like that's just another layer that you're doing on the fly.
Yep. Yeah, no, I also think I agree with what you said. And in addition, I think this team also kind of is like kind of slow to move the ball. Like I feel like there's opportunities missed. There's a lot of isolation play. I think Kenny's game kind of more of like the iso. He was hot from three that game, but whenever he's like not falling, it's like it's painful because like then no one's really getting the rock. I think the guys who are playing in that game. I mean, I think they're missing Zach and Sen. I think Zach and Sen move the ball pretty well. But without those guys, like there's no setup. I feel like Manny, I think it's his first time playing with these guys. He's like a score first guard. So is Kenny. I think Edgar tries to set up, but it's hard to like, get the teamwork going. Sean as a sub. Sean's an unselfish player, but even with him, it was hard to kind of get anything going. Um, they had France. I feel like he shot 0 for 7. His shot hasn't been doing too hot in the first two games of the season. So I think it's more frustration. It's almost like what you described with Michael Kim. Once he gets the ball, it's like his first time touching it, and he's just gonna fucking shoot. It doesn't matter like where he is on the court. He's just like fuck it. Like this is my only opportunity, right? So I think that team needs to do like kind of going back to the drawing board and like just setting up for each other. Uh, Not having Zach and Sen definitely hurts. Those guys aren't the best 3-point shooters, but they do a little bit of everything. Like they play defense, they hustle, they can make the pass. They might not be the best at like all those, but they're pretty good at it. So I think once they're back, they'll definitely help just improve the team overall. And then obviously having Josh, like a great off ball player, he could do a little bit of everything as well. Will only help improve this team. So hopefully, they can figure something out and get the team kind of be more cohesive with each other. But yeah, I think that's a good recap of Taylor Swifties and Paw Patrol. We have our last game, which was my game. We'll steal your lunch money, and we played against Kevin Diaz. And yeah, just I laugh at that team name every time. My team ended up winning 70-49. My team was also pretty hot from the field that day. Some standout performances was JC. I think JC like didn't miss in the first half. He ended up with 24 and 10 and also 8 assists, so almost a triple double with only 2 turnovers, which is pretty crazy. He shot 4 for 13 from the three, 10 for 22 overall. So it had a really, really good game. And then Jared, who was a 6th round pick, this is another week of Jared popping off. The first week he had 23. He gets 18 this week, shoots 61%. Mostly all of his points came from free throws or just with
Layups.
the paint. Yeah, layups, exactly. So he has a great finish around the rim. He shot 8 for 11, finishing near the rim. 3 steals, easy transition points. So Jared's been, I feel like, a big hot topic like across the league because nobody wanted him, and he was available in the 6th round. Like me and Jason are like, yeah, we have to get Jared, right? Because just the value for at that round was like ridiculous, and thankfully it's showing. So we've been really pleasantly surprised and impressed with his performance. Only issue with this team, I feel like, is just the injuries. Zay sprained his ankle. Bobby hurt his knee, and then Curry, who hasn't played yet, has sprained his ankle. So we're just currently dealing with some injuries. So that's probably one thing we're trying to do is just stay healthy, recover, hopefully just get five per game. So we've been doing good with 5 to 6. We had five first week, six this week, so we'll see how we do next week. Um, and then the team we played against, Kevin Diaz, they started off hot too. Jeff Zhang played very well. He has a knee injury. I was guarding him for like pretty much the whole game, but the first half, I think he shot it like 4 or 5 times. He didn't miss. Like he had like two or three like low post, mid post, like just shots, and then he had like two big threes. But then after that, like second half, he went quiet. Leo had a great game. He had a much better performance, I thought. I think he's more comfortable playing with these guys. Maybe he was getting more touches inside, less turnovers, more rebounds. So I think overall he's showing a lot of improvement. Kevin Diaz, he's doing his thing. He's playing consistently. Week two, I think his numbers were pretty consistent with week one. Not having Joan this week kind of hurt. I feel like they had a new player, Frank, who moved up from rec. He didn't do too much. He shot 0 for 4. He had like, I think it's like the first game jitters.
Hmm.
And then they had a sub Albert, so they weren't at full force, missing two players, missing Sam and Jones. So there's definitely a lot of improvement to be seen from this team. They are big, but they seemed like they still have to figure out how to play with each other.
Yeah, I mean that's probably the challenge for what the majority of the league, I think, outside of maybe, your team, Steve, and maybe your team, Ethan, right? Like you guys play with you got, the core cast of players, right, on that team. Like you've played with them in other leagues. So it's a little bit easier, right, where you already have that established chemistry, where they like to play, you guys have similar commonalities of like how you guys want to play, and what you guys want to do on offense and defense. So that's a huge undertaking, hence also why I think your team, regardless of injury, Steve, like will be fine. Like you have a really selfless group of guys that are willing to play together and play basketball the right way, right? With Bobby, John, yourself, right? And that makes it easy for, Jared to come in, do his thing, be able to shine what he's great at, right? He's basically JP's version of like SGA, or that the Flushing version. But then then you guys can pick your spots. JC can play make, you can pass, you can do all the other things, and then it makes you guys even more dangerous, right? When Jarrett's hitting or whatever, like that was the case in our game when we played them week one. Like now we're pressing up to play him tight or to make him shoot, and it leaves open shots for yourself, Steve, right, from three, or Bobby, who, we a lot of us had never seen him play. Like he was scoring and hitting shots, right? So, you know, the way that your team makeup is and how you guys are playing is like really important. Same with you, Ethan, and your team with Josh and Brian and everyone else, right? So it comes a little bit easier. And I think for the other teams, like that's the biggest hurdle, especially um within our season, but it's also like the bit it's like the biggest challenge, but like the biggest reward if you're able to unlock it, because like that's what makes hoops, like, and it also kind of factors in that like randomness factor, right? That X factor, because you're playing GM, you're also trying to make sure like when you're drafting or playing with guys, like maybe someone on paper is better, or you've seen them in one-on-one, they're better talent, but they may not be a better fit, right, for your team. And I think that always goes back to like when you're playing an organized ball, there's one basketball, right? And the one goal, regardless of whether or not people want to admit it or not, isn't stat hunting or embarrassing your defender. It's like, is your team winning, right? And that's the most important thing at the end of the day. So I think the team makeup, team chemistry, the hierarchy of roles, and how people are playing together is going to be more important sometimes than talent, right? And I think that's going to be the biggest thing for every team to kind of figure out how that plays into like their team strategy and their identity.
No, yeah, definitely agree. Talking about team strategy, I guess we can kind of go into predictions for upcoming games. So the next week, Louis, your team is playing a team that we just played, Kevin Diaz. After me kind of discussing a little bit more on your current knowledge, I guess like how you feeling in going into that matchup?
I mean, I feel confident with our team. I think we've made a lot of great progress, and we've made, really good steps forward in terms of like how we're playing together as a team, how we're communicating. There's still things that we'll want to tighten up and brush up on. I think it'll come down to, whether or not Jones available. He definitely brings a different level of game planning and how we would, ideally operate, or how I'm thinking about it. I think for us, like how we would, approach it. I'm probably not going to say it on air, but we could always talk about it the next week or everything else. Like there's
No, that's what this podcast was for. That was the original objective. So I could
what
just
to
get together with you guys and just talk hoops.
Oh
I
yeah,
want
but I mean,
I want
I'm not gonna.
unfiltered Louis. I want unfiltered
I
Louis.
mean, it'll depend on if Joan is playing or not. Like if he's playing, like that changes how I would approach game planning and how we would, attack certain personnel and matchups. If he isn't playing, um, some of the other things can be a little bit more aggressive. We could double down on certain elements of the game that I think we have
I
a
think
strong advantage in. Um,
I could just say it. Steve, you go.
I
You had something to say.
I was just gonna say, all right, get Leo out of the paint, let him shoot threes, box out Kevin. Jeff saying like he's 50-50, like he either does something really good or he'll turn it over. Brian Lee, he's very quick lefty. He loves to drive, but I feel like he can't shoot that well. It's like 1 for 6 on three, like wide open. Min, I think Min had a hard time guarding like who he was guarding. JC popped off on him. I think when Jared got the switch, Jared popped off. Jared at 18. So whoever Min's guarding, maybe attack. And then, I can't really speak much about Albert because Albert's a sub and Frank is new. So that's that's my recommendations going into next week.
Yeah, you just reminded me. So I feel like Kevin Diaz, not the player, the team. It's always so confusing. I feel like the team actually kind of got exposed this last week because, like you said, Min, Jared drove by him or JC drove by him like every time, like the blow-bys. They scored a lot in the paint. And then if you just kind of look at their roster, when I initially looked at them from the draft, I was like, oh, that's a solid team. But after last week and now looking at their roster, I'm thinking that they're going to have trouble with perimeter defense, right? Um, I don't see a particular like perimeter defender who's like a lockdown defender. Jeff Jang is normally very good with perimeter defense, but his knee is hobbled, right? So then it's like, okay, you're going to rely on Brian, Joan, Min, and Kevin Diaz. Kevin Diaz is a good defender, but then there are so many uh, other players that you could kind of game plan against and try to take advantage of. And in particular against Louis' team or Ryan's team, I should say, think about their personnel. It's just they're so big, right? They can force a switch, or they don't even need to get a switch. They could just get it to someone who can drive against one of their weaker perimeter defenders, or they could feed somebody in the post like Yu Fong or Jen Yi, who played great this past week, by the way. And I feel like they're just too big and too strong for one of the defenders, and that should be the game plan. I feel like that's what I would take advantage of if I was Ryan's team.
I mean, you guys, are definitely onto something. I think there's yes
We're
elements
cooking.
of that. And I think there's also how we would probably approach them on defense, what we want to make them do, right? Like a lot of things you guys have said. Like we know Leo's game, we know Kevin's game, we know John's game. Like, you know, also the way that we've approached, what do we want to take away and what do we want to force them into doing? There could be things that if we aren't going man to man, right, you could throw out a zone, we could force them into being perimeter only, right, and really take away, Jeff and Leo's like best qualities, right, in terms of like being able to spot up and and play one-on-one or be in good positions, right? Really force their perimeter guys to do the bulk of decision making and play making, right? And I think a lot of the other things that we can do, from a pressure defense and just kind of like havoc
Mhm.
type of role, like we could apply that. And I think there's a lot of flexibility. And I think also, right, comes down to Jones, because like if Jones playing and things like that, right, we might switch up on some of the things or how we attack either on offense and defense, right? But I think there are elements to both things that you guys said that we would ideally implement into our game plan.
Steve, Louis is not going to make a pick against his own team, so let's just make the pick. Well, who do you got in that matchup?
Oh, I'll make it. I got us. Like we're
Yeah, of course. Yeah, that's what I
the
said.
fu-
We can't ask
like
you. We can't ask you. So let's go to Steve. Steve, who do
I
you got in that matchup?
I got Louis' team, I got Ryan's team. I think they're on like that trend upwards. They have like a lot more upside from what I've seen uh compared to Team Kevin Diaz. I think Kevin Diaz like there's just some question marks that I haven't like seen the answers to, and even with Joan coming back and kind of strategizing, I just feel like there's just something missing, and maybe those gaps like will still be left as question marks for me for this season. But unless they figure out that quickly, I think Ryan's team has the win this upcoming week.
Yeah, uh, I also have Ryan's team. So not much I don't want to repeat what you said, but yeah, for the reasons stated previously, I got Ryan's team.
Cool. Gonna move on to the next game, which should be a banger. It's the two teams that are 2-0. It's my team, Will Steal Your Lunch Money, Captain JC, and then Paw Patrol, Captain Josh Schwartz, Ethan's team. Um, I'm not gonna go too much into the strategy because I know Ethan's probably gonna take my words and then like come up with some triple counter threat. But high level, based on what I've seen so far and what I've already talked about, Ethan and Josh are very hot from three. Definitely going to be, paying attention to them, trying our best to lock them up. I know Ethan personally playing pickup outside just the leagues. He's just been hot from three. So really need to make sure we have tabs on Ethan and Josh. Their guy Joe, he's like a kind of jack of all trades. He's impressed me so far. Had a couple turnovers, but he's very explosive, active, and he's also like a similar player to like Brian M, who's like always hustling, physical. So I think those two are we need to put a body onto those guys. Josh Lou has been playing pretty well, but like Ethan says, besides the scoring, like his turnovers can definitely use some improvement, decision making. We kind of know a little bit of his habits, but it's still kind of new. He's like second year player into the season, and besides that, outside of that, like pickup, I haven't played with him too much. Brian H, he's always looking to shoot, so if he gets hot, he's another player we have to look out for on three. So, um, but overall, I mean, if we're healthy, should be a good matchup. I'm always going to put my team, as winning. So, um, but yeah, I think that's high level what I think of that team.
it's gonna
I'm
be a
gonna say my
banger.
piece. I'm gonna say my piece, and then I'll let Louis make his pick. Um, so I'm actually gonna admit I think we're the underdog going into this matchup because I like your team more, and we're missing a key piece this upcoming Wednesday. We're missing Brian Melville.
Oh wow.
Um,
Oh,
yeah, so you guys are very big, very physical, and we're missing him, so d definitely puts us at a disadvantage. Um, we're obviously going to try to win the game and try to. I think if you guys have six players like you have been having, then we got to try to like speed you up, try to get you tired, get one of you into foul trouble, all the classic ways you try to win a game like that. I don't think you guys have a particular weakness that we would hone in on. Um, but yeah, I mean, you could probably see it coming from a mile away. Like those are probably going to be some of the strategies we try to employ. But I have us as as the underdog. Um, I think it's going to be a big test for our team going in with that underdog mentality and being tested. But I don't think I'm going to read too much into the game because we're missing Brian, and we're also having that rematch in the last week of the season. And if we have our full squad then and everyone's healthy, like on our side and your side, then that should be the banger. I'm very curious to see what happens in that week.
Well, that changes things of what I would have said. I think now knowing Brian's, I mean that's a huge loss for your team, Ethan. I think yeah, I think I was gonna say if everyone was healthy and everything else, I mean obviously I want to see this game happen, later on in the season. But I think what I was gonna say, I was like I think the matchup's gonna come down to can is going to be Brian and Scott versus like the versus Bobby, like that matchup in terms of like I feel like Ethan and JC, you're going to guard each other, try and cancel each other out, right? You got Josh and or you know then you got Brian who would ideally match up against Steve um or Z. And then, your guys' ball movement and you know, ability to really transition really well is gonna kind of play on how will Steve and their team be able to you guys probably have them operate in the half court, right? You know, what type of scoring and off ball action are they gonna get? Because knowing Ethan, he's probably gonna take away, the JC and the the Steve option, right? So making the others. And I that's why I was originally gonna say it's gonna come down to probably that matchup of like Bobby versus like Brian or Scott, right? And whoever wins that matchup for which team is probably gonna ideally tip the scales in the other way because I think the way that both you guys are gonna game plan are gonna take away the primary options and your original identities of what you guys want to do, and it's going to come down to like who's making the right plays, who's winning their battles in the trenches for like those other matchups because that's going to dictate those crucial moments in the flow of the game, like where momentum's going to go.
All
But
right, let's hear your pick
uh,
though.
yeah, who's
You-
about to
I mean,
say?
with that, I mean, when you guys don't have Brian like that, and is Steve, how's he? Is his ankle as bad as it is, or is he going to play?
I mean,
Because
he sprained his ankle in the game, but he came back and he finished the game. So I can
I mean,
imagine.
okay, well then if
Yeah,
you guys are without Brian, like yeah, I think that's going to be a huge hurdle for you guys to overcome. Um, I would take Steve's team if I'm a betting man, but I wouldn't be surprised, and I wouldn't be surprised if you guys somehow pulled up an upset. Because I could see a scenario where you guys speed him up, throw something to throw him off, and ideally beat him in transition, and speed up the game, and then run the JC and Steve seam off the court just by tiring them out.
makes sense. All right, our last matchup, Mo Money and Mo Buckets versus Taylor's Swifties. Kind of like all the points we talked about before. If they have Josh Taylor Swifties, if they have Josh, it's like a new team. And if they have Zach and Send back, they'll be at full strength, which I'm eager to see. And then Mo Money, Mo Buckets. I think these are the two teams that I kind of said are like both kind of with the sticky fingers, like just holding the ball too long, ISO ball, just not really too much teamwork. So um, I think whoever is hitting their shots, I feel like this game will win the game. So to me, it's very close. If I were to pick one, I think I might have to go with Mo Money, Mo Buckets just this week. I think they're like itching for their first win. Mo, Luis, Brandon, they're very prideful and I think they're 0-2 right now. So the first week it was a very close game. This past week it was like a 10-point like deficit, 9-point deficit. And I feel like they're just like really hungry for that win and really like going back to the drawing board and you know, um doing whatever they can do to win. So maybe they'll listen to this podcast and take that advice and really step it up. If Taylor Swift, if they don't have Josh, they don't have Senator Zach, it's already a huge disadvantage. And then, but yeah, that's just my input.
If I'm going next, uh, I think I'm going with Taylor Swifties. I'm just thinking about their starting five, which would be Ed, Kenny, Josh Liu, Zach Jang, and Sensei. It's a strong five, and I can see how they might use their size to their advantage, all their skill sets to their advantage against Mo Money, Mo Buckets. Um, I'm not saying it's a huge. I would put them at like -3 or something. I think Mo Money, Mo Buckets is going to be right there. I agree with you. They're hungry for a win. They played much better. They put up way more points. I think if they make some small adjustments, um, they can definitely win this game. They could play better, look more cohesive on the court, and get that win. I just think Taylor Swifties is a slight edge, so I'm going to go with them.
Yeah, I my hoop brain and everything else kind of defaults towards the same rationale and reasoning of Ethan. Like Taylor Swifties at full strength with Sen with Zach gives them more flexibility, more options to help guard against you know the great ISO players that Mo and them have. But I think the disadvantage is like playing offense takes a lot of energy out of you, right? And they also then are going to have to, guard, the Joshes, the Kennys, the Sens of the world, right? And I think the movement and things like that, right? Both games, I think I saw them play. They've had five, six guys. I think that's where at some point, probably end of the first half, beginning of the second half, right? I think that's where Taylor Swifties are going to have an edge and they'll probably make a run. Just being able to kind of, exploit that fact, right? Like they're gonna put Mo and Brandon and Jeff and everyone to have to play defense just as well. And then on offense, right? If you're also playing, one-on-one or things like that, it gets tiring. And you want to be able to move the ball, get easier shots, right? Save some of your energy. But I wouldn't be surprised. I know Mo and those guys are hungry. Like they even after when we were talking our game, like they wanted it bad. And to your point, like they're all very prideful, right? And I think that's also the good thing about our league, right? We can leave a few jabs there. You can tilt a few people, but like those guys, like every time when we've played with them, like they very much want to win. And all it takes is a little something, right, to get them going, whether it's Luis, whether it's Brandon. I think you're not gonna be beat by just one guy. So it's gonna take maybe one or two of them, right? Maybe even all three to basically be firing on all cylinders. And I think that's the thing where we can all three be operating at full, at full power at the same time. And I think with how they match up, it'll be a little bit tough.
Do we know when Stefan Dong is coming back?
No, no clue. Oh yeah, I forgot they're missing Steph, who's a great
Yeah.
shooter player. So
Like if he was there, like if he's back, right, that changes the entire dynamic because like I said, you have Anthony
Yeah.
on one side who's spacing the floor. If you hit Steph on the other side, who's just a
Also,
great shooter, like the piece.
Andrew Cho.
Oh yeah, he's in like Europe or something.
Okay, so he's probably out then.
Well, I mean, he should be back. I don't know.
Hmm.
I don't know how long he's out. But I know from his IG he's in Europe. But yeah, if you have another person to kind of help space the floor, right? And to my point, like if they're not running just five, six guys, and if they had like Steph and Andrew, that makes it a lot more complicated because now you got to pick your poison. And if that was the case, if those two guys play, I probably choose Mo and team because then the offensive guys in Mo's team have the advantage where you kind of negate the help side that Sen, Zach, and everyone else can bring. And if you got to stay home on Seth and everyone else, bro, you're giving him open shots and everything else, like they'll kill you from there. And then Luis, Mo and Brandon are getting to the basket anytime they want.
yep.
That's a good call. I forgot like those guys were on the team and they're missing. But yeah, that changes things. But what I know and what I think's gonna happen and who's gonna be there, I think, the edge goes to Edgar and the Swifties.
they gotta this week in particular, they can't do the come up and zero pass like pull up three. Like that's actually been a lot of their shot selection. If they do that and then Josh Liu leaks out, I mean, that's going to be buckets all day. And it's particularly bad when their three forwards are up uh, and not low. So there were, like, I think one or two possessions that I saw on film where one that I really distinctly remember, it was Mo coming down with the ball in the middle, and then on the wings it was Brandon and Jeff, and in the corners they actually had Louise and
Yep.
Michael or Anthony, and then Mo came up with the ball in the middle, and then he pulled a three with zero passes, and then he missed it, and I was thinking. Oh, for this team in particular, that's a really risky shot because that means you have a 0% chance of an offensive rebound. 0% chance, right? Because the sides
Everyone's on
can't
the
come
perimeter.
in.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. And so like if Josh Liu were guarding the person who pulls that zero pass three and then he leaks out, yeah, chances are they're probably going to grab the board and then that's like 2 points the other way. So, uh, I like rooting for the underdog, so there's one thing to look out for, guys. Like you got to be careful about that this game. You got to be a little bit smarter with your shot selection this game in particular.
Agreed. All right. I mean, I think we have our bets in. I think that's everything I wanted to cover today.
Should
Uh,
parlay it and make it a bigger payout. Just
good.
none of this
JP
what
Underground.
single game picks.
I mean, we have our bets in, and yeah, I think I would say I got wait, who's our first game again? I got Louis' team, and then I have my team, and then I have Mo Money, Mo Bucket. So you heard it here first.
Okay. I mean, I'm going with mine. Then then Swifties, and then Steve, your squad.
What
If
if
I
you
was a
gave
betting
my
man.
team? What if you gave my team points, like
I
to
mean,
make
if you
that
give
game a little bit?
if I know exactly what how many points y'all are giving you, that could change my answer because I think you guys are going to be competitive. I bet
What if
The Brian injury hurts.
what if we got 5.5 points?
5.5, I think they cover. I think if you guys got like 8.5, I'd take you guys. Five
Okay,
and a half is
okay,
two possessions. I think Brian is worth more than two possessions.
that's fair. That's fair.
All right, we'll have to see this Wednesday. I mean, we have our open division
Yeah.
games on Wednesday. Um, but yeah, I'm looking forward to that. Want to thank Louis for joining this week's episode. Thank you, Ethan, for putting out amazing stats. Do you guys have any comments of anything else you guys want to see? Like and subscribe, get that algorithm up. But yeah, that's it for me.
I mean,
Yo, this was fun.
yeah, I think beyond talking about our league and play, like I think there's a lot more of like unfiltered hoops that, we could talk through and I think with the community and everything else, like hey, we're moving in the right direction. We have a league, we have a community of guys. I think to your energy, Steve and Ethan, what you guys have done is amazing. And I think, with this new group of players, right, men and women who have joined the building and the community have started to play, right? Like there's obviously something of value that's coming because everyone's always talking about it. Everyone's, talking about it or thinking about it. And I think we're kind of seeing, maybe the beginning of a legacy that, you all are building. And I think you guys should be proud about that. And what can we do to kind of continue the inclusiveness and rationale for people who want to just, make friends and play hoops, right? I mean, we're not playing for any money, right? It's more pride, trophies, things like that. But like with both the open and the rec, right? I think we're using basketball as a vehicle of, ideally celebrating competition, but at the end also, ideally building, a strong network of friends and people that you can rely on moving forward. And that's always what hoops has been about. You know, playing together, trying to focus on a common goal. But at the end of the day, right, you're in the trenches with them. Those are the people you want to continue to participate with.
Yep. And that's what JP League's all about, man. And yeah, I mean, we're gonna have a lot more of these. Love to have you on aboard for future episodes. Maybe we'll get some other teammates involved as well. But yeah, I think that concludes this week's episode. And I'll catch you guys in the court. I'm probably about to go there right now.
All right, peace, guys.
Later,
Appreciate
guys.
appreciate the invite.
Thank you. Bye, guys.
See you guys.